waiting, getting people admitted right now who've been in the waiting room. Thank you for waiting. It's a beautiful Tuesday day out there. I hope it's sunny where you're at. I'm in Missoula and it is nice and sunshiny. Everything's melting and a little icy also, so be careful out there. It is slick. Um, we'll probably wait just about 30 seconds and then we're going to get started today with our Tuesday talk. So let's go ahead and just get started. I don't feel like waiting. All right. Hi, everyone. I am Kimberly Dudick, the CEO and co-founder of the Public Policy Institute of the Rockies, here today with Pipper's co-founder and CFO, Sophie Moon. So hi, Sophie. And we're hosting these Tuesday talks to further the Public Policy Institute of the Rockies mission of bringing attention to underaddressed issues in Montana, letting you know some of the people working on them, and giving you the opportunity to ask the questions that you want answered. These talks are recorded and attendees can post questions in the chat box. There's also a Q&A box. Feel free to chat a little bit in the chat box as long as you stay respectful, otherwise we will kick you out. And we will try to answer as many of these questions as possible at the end. And we are thrilled today to have with us Liz Albers, the Executive Director of the Montana Public Interest Research Group. Hi, Liz.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You bet. MontPIRG is a nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to effecting positive change by empowering Montana's next generation of civic leaders. It's housed at the University of Montana. For 40 years, MontPIRG has given young leaders the tools to create tangible change in the areas of voting rights, consumer protection, and the environment. Prior to MontPIRG, Liz worked on numerous political campaigns and also in the Montana 2019 legislature as a legislative aide. She holds a Juris Doctorate from the University of Maine School of Law, and prior to her work in politics, worked as a family law attorney in Lake County, Montana. Liz has a Bachelor of Arts in Business Management from Simmons University with a minor in Arts Administration. She's a member of the Montana Arts Council and the Planned Parenthood Advocates of Montana Board of Directors. Liz lives in Missoula's West Side neighborhood with her husband, Charlie, and their dogs, Toast and Jack, as well as a fluctuating amount of chickens. Fun. So welcome, Liz. Would you want to just give us a little introduction of yourself besides what I just did?
Sure. So yes, hello everyone. My name is Liz Albers with Montana Public Interest Research Group, the Executive Director. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I've been with the organization since May, so I'm fairly new to the job. And like Kim said, prior to that, I've just worked at, I think, every level of the campaign in Montana. And I'm really excited to be in this position to work with young folks and help them, give them the skills and the tools to become Montana's leaders.
Well, great. Well, thank you for being with us today. So tell us about the work that you're doing at MontPIRG.
Sure. So, like you said in your intro, MontPIRG, we're based here at the University of Montana. I get to look out on the lovely University of Montana campus here. We have been in existence for 40 years. This is our 40th year, 2021. We're going to have a party. Hopefully some of you can come later in the fall. And, like you said, we're a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that empowers and educates the next generation of civic leaders. And we do that a few ways. The first one being that we teach students, our volunteers and interns, young folks here on campus, the building blocks of organizing. So, we teach them how to register voters. We're teaching them how to advocate on the issues they care about. So, for instance, right now with the Montana legislature happening, they're out there talking to students about the bills that we've prioritized. They're also signing up to testify at legislative hearings on these bills. And they're just fully engaged on the issues we work on. The other unique thing about MontPIRG is, like a lot of nonprofits, we have a board, and it's a board that I and the other staff report to. But our board is students. They're all students here at the University of Montana, so they call the shots in terms of the issues and campaigns we work on. For most of MontPIRG's history, we've engaged in the areas of voting rights, conservation, and consumer rights, which for the most part has been renters' rights. And so the other piece I can add about MontPIRG is we're a small but mighty organization. We do have our here at Missoula, but we also have one down in Bozeman. It's myself, my deputy director, and our Missoula field organizer here at Missoula on campus, and then we have our Bozeman organizer as well. So that's just a little bit about MontPerg.
Well, thank you so much. Why did you decide to get involved in the way that you have? What really matters to you?
Yeah, so on a personal level, I can say, and I think you touched on this in the intro, Kim. I've touched on it. I worked on a lot of campaigns, and I think, I'm no longer in my 20s. I'm at a certain point in my career, and I think, we have a responsibility to, share what we know with younger generations so they can be effective organizers and be effective leaders. So that was a really appealing part of this work for me, was being able to share what I knew about working on campaigns with young folks. The other reason I think our work is so important is that there's this misconception that young folks don't care about politics or don't care about the issues that are perhaps being debated at the legislature, both and at the national level, and that's simply not true. So I think, we're able to amplify students' voices and, like I said, really give them the tools to be effective leaders. The other reason I think this work is so important is also because, if you spend a lot of time or spend any time really in the nonprofit sphere in Montana or Montana politics, you're going to bump into a MontPerg alum. We're in fact, I think there's one also on this call currently. I'm happy to say Sophie Moon is a MontPerg alum. And, really it's, we're proud of our alum and, being so proud to be a part of their success. And I think that's it's fantastic.
Well, what kind of an impact has MontPerg been able to make over the years?
Yeah, so, the reason I was interested in becoming the executive director of MontPerg is I saw the success that the organization had on campaigns, specifically thinking about in 2018, the 6 mil levy. MontPerg did a lot to get that passed. So more recently, during my tenure last year, we were successful in getting the marijuana ballot initiatives onto the November ballot and then subsequently passed. We collected over 15,000 signatures in mid-May to, I'm thinking back, time is a funny thing now, but May and June, we collected signatures to get those on the ballot. And then subsequently worked on them to get them passed. MontPerg's interest in that legislation had to do with the conservation funding that was going to be directed to our public lands from the CI 118 initiative. So we felt that was incredibly important to have the statewide funding mechanism in place by these ballot initiatives getting passed and the tax revenue from marijuana. Additionally, the other impact we had is we registered over 5,600 voters for the 2020 election. And, someone who's been at the state legislature, Kim, that a lot of those races are only decided by a couple votes. So we have no doubt that those voters that we registered had impact at different levels in the 2020 election. So that's just a couple of our recent wins that I'm very proud of.
Well, thank you for all your work on that. Now, you talked about the legislative session. What are some of the issues that you've been spending your time on during this legislative session?
Yeah, so like I said, our student board decides the issues we engage on. So back in the fall, we had a meeting to discuss what our priorities were. And we decided those before we had the makeup of the legislature. And we decided, again, voting rights, conservation, specifically renewable energy, making sure that the funding for the public lands from the marijuana tax revenue was also honored by the legislature was another priority. And renters' rights, there's not a lot of organizations that when bad renters' rights bills go through the legislature, there's not a lot of groups that are there to show up and say no. And MontPerg, we've been doing renters' rights as long as we've been in existence. So we're very proud to show up and fight against bills that harm renters. You also probably know from the legislature, depending upon the week, it's different things happening. This week and last week feels like it has been very renters' rights heavy, whereas a couple weeks ago, I felt like it was a ton of voting rights bills. So we have two awesome lobbyists who are there currently. One particularly works with voting rights privacy bills as well, and renters' rights, and the other individual works on conservation issues and renewable energy issues. So, most recently, one bill that we've been working against is House Bill 176, which would end election day voter registration. So we've been doing significant work there. And then this morning, I can tell you that one of our lobbyists was in the hearing for the bill that would limit rental application fees. So we have a lot going on. We have a lot we're watching. Yeah,
it seems like the bad voting rights bills just keep coming. I think there was another one that just came that would be similar to what happened, I believe, in North Dakota, where it would only allow absentee ballots to go to a physical residence and not a P.O. box. And that, of course, would disenfranchise the Native American vote, especially, but also other people who are disabled and other issues. So it seems like there's a continual assault on voting rights this session.
For sure. In fact, I think today also in House Judiciary, I want to say House Bill 406, which would put BIPA back in place, the Ballot Interference Prevention Act, which, as you know, got struck down by our court last fall, trying to bring that back. So we'll be there to oppose that as well.
Well, thank you for that. I would love to see how much state payer money is going on these bills that are blatantly unconstitutional, but that's for a different issue. So, what do you want the listeners today to understand about the issues that you've been talking about and to understand about Montpurg?
Yeah, so I'm just because my head's in the legislative bubble, I will just say to listeners, my big push is to contact your legislator about these bad bills, about these good bills. Tell them when you support things, and also thank them for their votes. For instance, it's my understanding that House Bill 176, the one we're talking about, with vote against voting rights, or the one we're standing up against that would end election day voter registration. The state admin, or I believe, legislators received over 1,000 comments against that bill, messages and online. So it might not feel like when you're, submitting a comment or, writing a letter that it's maybe falling on deaf ears, but they hear us when we reach out to them. The other point I'll add, I think, one of, the silver lining maybe about the Zoom link testimony or the COVID pandemic and having this component of Zoom testimony is that you don't have to get in your car and go to Helena to testify against or for a bill. It's incredibly easy to sign up, albeit I'll say lately it's been a little difficult when they're scheduling these bills fast and furious. But you can sign up to register from your home and, talk and join a committee hearing and talk about why you oppose or support a bill. It doesn't have to be incredibly long. It can be succinct. It can be as simple as, stating your name and saying that you agree with the people that have already spoken on the bill or spoken against the bill. I'll add those two lists while my head is in the legislative sphere. In terms of, what I want people to know about Montpurg is that, we're really a part of the University of Montana. We're part of Montana really in general in terms of, how long we've been in existence. And that I think they should be, what's the word? Young folks are really fantastic, and they are interested in politics, and they want to have these conversations, and we're teaching them how to effectively advocate for these issues. I can tell you one of the most rewarding things I've seen lately, or had that I find about this job, especially lately with the legislative session, is all the young folks who are coming in testifying against or for these bills. Last week, we had two individuals who are volunteers in terms of Montpurg who went in and testified against this voter ID law, Senate Bill 169, and they did such a fantastic job. And I think, that's the bomb I need during what's happening at the legislature for a lot of times. So I would just say, when you support our work, you're really supporting Montana's next generation of civic leaders.
Yeah, definitely growing the next generation. And honestly, what they're doing doesn't just impact their rights, but impacts everyone's rights. So, thank you for doing that work. So how can people become involved with what you're doing?
Sure. So, and to your point, Kim, that you just added, I think when everyone is engaged in our democracy, it's just better. Right? When we have young folks that are engaged, we're a better state. How they can get involved, I would say, following us on our Facebook. We are permanently updating people there on the bills we're watching. Following us on Instagram. Our two lobbyists do video updates to let people know about the bills that are, happening as things are happening in Helena. I would say Facebook. You can also sign up to get our emails. We send out weekly emails. We have Take Action Tuesday, where we, again, lift up an action that you can take to engage at the legislative level, or when it's not the legislative session, what you can do on the other campaigns we're working on. So I would say follow our Facebook, sign up for our emails. I think there's a volunteer sign up as well on our website, which is www.mtperg.org, and we can get you plugged in.
Well, thank you for that. And I just want to say, for anyone who's thinking about testifying and you might be a little concerned about it, I actually just testified this morning on a bill as a supporter, and then I'm going to be testifying again this afternoon as a supporter of another bill. It's really easy. You have to register by noon the day before, though, so that's something to be aware of. If you're going to testify, you can't just wait until the day of. So you have to register the day before. You can look it up on the Montana Legislative website to go there and register. It's really easy. And you don't even have to worry about how you look, because they don't allow any sort of video or anything. You're just a voice being who's talking. So they're not even going to be looking at you. So it's really easy to do. You don't have to be nervous about it. And it's really important. And I think that, Liz made a really good point that that's a great way to be involved now. All right, so I think that Sophie has put your contact information in the chat box if anyone wants to reach out. But at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sophie. We've had some questions coming in, and I'd like to give you a chance to answer those questions. So go ahead, Sophie.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Liz, and thanks for the introduction, Kim. So our first question is about Montperg generally. So what is your favorite aspect of working at Montperg, and what are you looking forward to working on this year?
Yeah, so my favorite thing about working with Montperg is really every day the students who are in here, and we're talking with them about these different issues, and then we're sending them out with clipboards or whatever to collect comments or register voters. Just really seeing young folks get engaged and do the work, and that's so rewarding. This year, I'm looking forward to Montperg's 40th anniversary that I touched on. I think after the legislative session, it's going to be really fun to plan a big party where we can have a lot of our alum and a lot of people who have, been impacted by Montperg all together, hopefully in one room. I'm very much looking forward to that. I think I'm in the municipal elections. I love municipal elections. I know they're not like as cool perhaps as the presidential, but I think especially here in Missoula, where I'm a resident, they're really exciting. So I'm excited for Montperg to provide the individuals who will be running for office there, connecting them with students and making sure that the issues that students care about here at the University of Montana is prioritized and talked with those candidates. Those are a couple things I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. Another question, do you think it means more to testify in person? This participant sounds like they did a Zoom testimony and they felt like they weren't listened to.
I think, it's I don't want to say it's dependent upon the committee. It's probably dependent upon the hearing. So for instance, I can tell you that a lot of times these hearings, especially on these really contentious bills, are going quite long. So, legislators are people. They get tired too. So I'm sorry the person had that experience. I think they're both equally effective. I think I think in person and online, it just depends a lot on what you have to say. And I think I'll just add that I think personal stories are the most effective. When you're able to tell a legislator or a legislative committee why a bill impacts you specifically or your experience, that's going to hit home. So I think, if you can have the best testimony in the world, it doesn't matter if you're in person, it doesn't matter if you're online. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps. Another question, what are you doing on housing and rental costs becoming more dire and extreme in Missoula and Bozeman, especially where out-of-staters are buying places sight unseen with cash and driving up housing prices and rent? What should be on state and local levels for housing?
Sure. So I know at the legislative level, there's like I said, we're a pro-tenant organization. We're doing bills, or we're working on bills that will make that easier or make the rental process easier for tenants. We'll see how those go at the legislative level. Additionally, we also plan on having those conversations with individuals who do run for city council here in Missoula, especially. You know, as a former renter here in Missoula, I know how bad, or how, what's the word, stressful the rental market can be. And I absolutely think that it's something that people who are running for city council are attuned to. And I think, you know, the Montana legislature, it can be frustrating. There's also a lot of good legislation that comes out of there, but it's not the end all be all. There are solutions at local levels that we think municipal candidates and city councils and counties can take to help renters.
Awesome. And then we have another question here. So obviously COVID has had a really huge impact on all of us, but it has had special impacts on students who are seeking in-person education, students at the University of Montana or MSU or across our state. What kind of are the impacts that you're seeing on students from COVID-19, and what has Montperg been doing to engage students kind of where they're at right now?
Yeah, so I can just say, you know, when I came into this job, campus was in shutdown, and subsequently in the fall, it's kind of half in person. But we know that just there's not as many students on campus as there has been in the past because of COVID. So we have to get creative. You know, we are still trying to do in-person signature collection, comment collection, voter registration. We obviously are as safe as possible about that. Face mask, hand sanitizer. I think when we were doing the signature collection for marijuana, the smell of hand sanitizer was permanent in this office. But understanding that there is something to be, realizing we have to be in person at some times, but just be as safe as possible, just because we do literally have to meet students where they are at. We've also, you know, tried to be more adaptable when it comes to online resources. I can tell you, for instance, in the fall, or the spring, one thing that Montperg worked on was the online voter registration portal, where we were able to register students, or students would send us, we would get their information, and then we'd send them their voter registration line or card fully filled out. All they had to do was put in their social, and then with the pre-stamped envelope, they could forward that to their respective county elections office. So, you know, those types of solutions are things we're permanently thinking about. Okay, how can we just, you know, given these hurdles, given these barriers, how can we still do our work? How can we still do our work safely? But still do this important work and do the important work of registering voters, getting signatures for whatever, you know, issue we're working on. Yeah.
Awesome. And I think looks like the last question, unless someone wants to hop in now, kind of last call. This participant is asking more about some of the environmental legislation that you're seeing in the legislature, you know, things around renewables or public lands.
Yeah. So I can talk a little bit. I know House Bill 475 was heard yesterday. It was brought by Representative Derek Skees. It would add hydroelectricity to the renewable portfolio standard. Montperg is opposed to adding that renewable energy to the RPS because, simply put, it would hinder other forms of renewable energy's development because they would essentially satisfy the RPS standard. So that's one bill we've most recently been working against. I can also talk last week, we were working on House Bill 359, which was pertaining to net metering. Luckily, that actually died before it ever got to committee. So that's a small win we will take. The other one, I can't recall the name, but it had to do with the amount of nitrates that could be put into the water. I believe, if I have my notes in front of me, I might be able to tell. I want to say it's Senate Bill. I think it was Senate Bill 164, and that actually also died as well. So we've been, monitoring those situations. And like I said prior, we are in support of the public lands, Habitat Montana being funded with the tax revenue from marijuana. As was laid out in CI 118, 50% of that tax revenue was going to go towards our public lands. And, Montana, we don't have a statewide funding mechanism for our public lands like other states. So that's huge. So that's another fight that we're seeing as the legislature continues and as the budget's being managed and decided on.
It looks like we have another question here. This participant has kind of a two-parter. So they're asking about a bill by Representative Cheetah to disallow students to register to vote. It sounds like there might have something to do with university towns. Can you speak more to this issue?
If it's the bill I'm thinking of, it's, I believe, House Bill 240. It would have required if a parent takes the student as a dependent on their taxes, the student has to be registered at that address to vote, which we know is completely impractical. And I'm happy to say that actually died on third reading yesterday. So yeah, we that passed second, but we were doing some work to talk to individuals on the House floor to kill it. And if anything's ever really dead in the legislature, I don't believe so. But at this point, we are happy that it died on third reading.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to Kim for some final questions.
Great. Thank you, Sophie. Thanks for answering those, Liz. I just have a couple follow-up questions that I thought of when you were talking. This is more supposition and you're going to be speculating, so I'm going to put that out there first. But when do you think that Montana will have access to adult use marijuana as passed by the voter initiative that you were involved in?
So they're supposed to have access next year in 2022. It is my understanding, however, that there's a bill currently, I think it's getting heard in House Judiciary on Friday to push that back by 1 year to 2023. So when do I think? I believe it should be 2022, but I wouldn't be surprised if it gets pushed back a little further.
And just to follow up from that, from a procedural viewpoint, then, even if something is passed by initiative, is it correct then that the legislature can come in and pretty much do whatever they want anyway?
Yes. So it's my understanding, yes, that the funding was laid out, that the legislature, when it comes to how the funding was laid out in CI 118, can go in and, move things around. But, our position is that a big part of the messaging with the ballot initiatives on marijuana was that this money was going to go to public lands. In fact, we heard from people who said, I'm kind of uneasy about, marijuana becoming legal. However, I know this is so hugely important for our public lands that I can get behind it for that alone. So there are those voters who voted on it for the public lands funding, and we think the legislature should honor those voters' vote.
Yeah. And then one last question, just to follow up on that. And you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. Could you just talk about the options that can be done after the legislature if there are like anti-voting bills that are passed that may be, unconstitutional or illegal? What are the options available to your organization or any other organization or citizens to then act after the session is done?
So I know lawsuits are typically sometimes what we see after certain legislation is passed, just challenging the constitutionality of it. The other thing that happens is ballot initiatives. So bringing a ballot initiative where we put something to the voters on whether or not they agree with a certain policy.
All right. So if anyone is concerned about what we're seeing, it's not all done when the legislature is over. Just to put that out there. All right, let's move on now to the final four questions that are intended to let people get to know you a little bit more outside of your work. What's your podcast you're listening to right now that you'd recommend to others?
Sure. So I'm a true crime junkie. My husband teases me because anytime there's like a new documentary on Netflix or HBO, he calls it Lady Wine Crime Time. And so to that point, I that's also the same vein for podcasts. I love My Favorite Murder, Criminal with Phoebe Judge. One I've been listening to lately that's not as macabre is Chameleon. It's Chameleon, the Hollywood con queen. It's about this woman who, or this individual, I should say. I'm only 4 episodes in, but so far I like it. Individual who is essentially has a scam going to defraud individuals who work in Hollywood, makeup artists or up and coming actors. And so far it's really interesting. But like I said, I'm only 4 in. But if I can definitely recommend My Favorite Murder and Criminal. So if you're into that stuff like I am.
Yeah, those are good ones. Who's your favorite singer?
Eddie Vedder. I get teased because I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan, and he's my favorite. I know he does have a solo artist. I'm thinking of your question. I don't know if he means within a band or on their own. He does have a solo album of ukulele songs, which I can recommend too.
Ukulele songs?
Yeah, it's Eddie Vedder playing the ukulele and singing. It's fantastic.
Me too.
Yeah, so.
Awesome. All right, where's your favorite place to go in Montana?
I mean, I love North Hot Springs. I love Chico Hot Springs. I think I just love hot springs in general. But for me personally, I love Rock Creek. It's really close here to Missoula. It's special for me. My husband and I go over there all the time camping in the summer. There's no cell phone service, which I love. I can just, hang out in a hammock and read a book and you can fish. And it's one of my favorite things to do in the summer here in Montana is go camping at Rock Creek.
Nice. And what's the best advice that you were ever given?
Gosh, so I was thinking about this, and so I graduated from University of Maine School of Law, and our commencement speaker was Angus King, and the senator from Maine. And he told this story about this individual he knew who his first job out of college was working on the Mike Dukakis campaign in 1988. And he was given this job of just being a photocopier. But this individual was like, I'm going to be the best photocopier this campaign's ever seen. And he was the first one in the morning. He was the last one to leave. He was just super committed to his job. And that anecdote stuck with me, this idea of just being the best at whatever job you have is because you never know who's watching, for one. Additionally, it might not be your dream job, but it could lead you to your dream job. So really just, being the best at whatever job you have, or trying your best at whatever job, and hard work pays off. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Liz. It's been nice hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really happy I got to talk with y'all today.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And to everyone who's listening today, thank you for listening. We're hosting these talks to provide an opportunity to hear from people about the work they're doing and the different organizations out there and how you can become involved. We've put the contact information for Montpurg in the chat box. It's basically mtpirg.org. And so if you want to, you can go there and see how you can get involved. And these are also recorded and will be released later in a podcast format, because there have been some people who weren't able to join us, but they always want to know what's going on. You can reach us at publicpolicyinstituteoftherockies.com, email at info@pipper.org, Twitter at Policy Rockies, Instagram at PPI of the Rockies, and Facebook, publicpolicyinstituteoftherockies.com. Next week, somebody just asked about that. Next week, we'll be having Whitney Williams on. She'll be talking about the new Snowbird Fund, and we will be having one of her coworkers with her also to talk about it. So it'll be 2 people on, which will be a different format for us. But this week, thank you so much, Liz, for being here. It was a pleasure talking with you and hearing about all the important work you're doing. So thank you so much. Take care, and everyone, thank you for being here today. Have a great day.